Row 7 says to knit 3 and then knit 2 together. On needle 1, I knit 3 stitches, then I knit the next 2 together. Needle 2 is purl, so I want to purl 3 and then purl 2 together. I'm going to place the last stitch from needle 2 to needle 3. Needle 3, I am purling the first 2 stitches together, and then I will purl to the end of the needle because there isn't a pair to go with the last stitch. Row 9 is knit 3 and knit 2 together. I have one stitch that's a knit at the end of this needle, and then the next is purl. Here's my knit stitch and here's my purl. I want to knit these two instead of purl because that's what I did on the first sum of this pair. Then I will purl the last 2 stitches individually on this needle. On needle 3, I'll purl the first stitch because it's borrowed from needle 2. Then I'll purl 2 together and then purl to the end of this needle. In row 10 on needle 1, I knit 2 stitches. I transfer 1 stitch from needle 1 onto needle 2. Then I continue with the pattern. On needle 2, I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches together. Then I purl the last 2 stitches on needle 2. On needle 3, I'm purling the first 2 stitches together, and then I purl the last 2 stitches on this needle. I want to condense the stitches onto 2 needles. I will place one of the 2 stitches from needle 2 onto needle 3, giving needle 3 4 stitches. Then the remaining stitch on needle 2 I'll place on needle 1, giving needle 1 4 stitches. Since my tail stitch is in the 2nd stitch position, I need to rearrange stitches so that the tail stitch is in the 1st stitch position on the needle. And here I'm removing 1 stitch from one needle and placing it on the needle that holds the stitch with the tail end. Next step is cutting the yarn with a tail of at least 12 inches to weave the ends in. What I like to do here is follow a formula. I insert my needle knitwise into the stitch in the front. Then I insert purlwise in the stitch in the back. Then I bring the yarn around between the 2 needles, pulling it down, and insert purlwise in the stitch in the front. Then I remove the 2 stitches that I just worked on from the work. I've come to the last 2 stitches. What I want to do here on the last 2 to secure it, insert knitwise on the stitch closest to you. Insert purlwise on the stitch furthest away from you. Then insert purlwise on the stitch in front of you and remove that stitch's needle from the work. Then the very last stitch, insert knitwise and then pull snug. I turn my work inside out to weave in my tail with the tapestry needle, pulling the needle to whichever side I need to work on. I've found a drop stitch, so I'll use my crochet hook to pick it up. If you are not sure how to do this, please review my drop stitch video. Next, I insert my tapestry needle into the loop on the crochet hook, then weave it in. There is not one right way to weave your tail in. I personally prefer to do this on the purl stitch side, using the horseshoe shapes as a guide. And after I am done with the weaving part, I will cut the yarn with a 1/4 inch cut length piece. The tail end of row 1 of the thumb is great to seal up the inevitable holes at the 3 cast-on stitch position and thumb intersection. Again, I follow the horseshoe shapes as best I can while closing any holes I see before I weave this tail completely into the project. Be prepared to turn your work inside out and right side out for ease in weaving. Now I'm at the intersection where knit meets purl. By weaving the tail in snugly, holes become invisible. I added a contrasting yarn long enough to pick up the 24 stitches from way back in the gusset pattern.